Welcome to Washington Hospital Today, dedicated to informing residents about healthcare topics and issues. Through programs featuring community forums and free health and wellness classes, our goal is to empower community members with the information needed to make informed health decisions. Washington Hospital has been providing healthcare to the residents of the Washington Township Healthcare District for the past 60 years. Today's presenter is Joyce Calixto. Joyce is a registered nurse at Washington Hospital.
Great. I'm so excited to be here tonight. These things that we're going to be talking about, continuous glucose monitors, are really, well, they're not new, but they're driven by technology, and it seems to be getting better and better every day. So hopefully these will be great tools for not just type 1, type 2 diabetes to receive better control in the future. There we go. So before I go further, I have to say I'm going to be talking about different products, and it's really for just education only. I am not being paid to talk about any of these particular products. And in particular, I want to say thank you to a family I know who are parents of a teenager with type 1 diabetes, and they donated some supplies to me so I could see what these continuous glucose monitors feel like, and also that I could try one on. So continuous glucose monitors, that's what we're talking about tonight. And I was saying this is just for educational purposes only. And that's a picture of me trying one of the continuous glucose monitors out. I'll get to that later. And so I was saying diabetes self-management, our goal is to keep our glucose levels within a healthy range with healthy behaviors such as eating, being active, and taking our medications. And then I think an important component to this is also using your brain to start thinking in a healthy way. So doing activities such as monitoring your glucose with a glucose monitor, problem solving, which is, for instance, what to do if your glucose stays too high or too low, or what to do when you don't have a glucose monitor handy, things like that, problem solving, reducing your risks. So not just the risk of high or low blood sugar, but also reducing your risk for complications down the road like cardiovascular problems, and also coping with stress. So these things all, I think, involve your brain. And even though we'll be talking about machines that will help us help control the diabetes, it doesn't mean that our brains have to stop working. So just a little bit of the language that I'm going to use tonight. You all probably know that glucose is the main chemical that your body uses for energy, and this glucose travels to the different parts of your body through your blood. So blood glucose is what we're measuring. It's synonymous. I'm going to also say the term blood sugar just out of habit, but what I really mean is blood glucose. There are other sugars in your body, but glucose is the most important. And then with diabetes, your body either lacks insulin, which is type 1, or your body is resistant to insulin, which is type 2. But in both those cases, glucose starts to accumulate in your blood and in other fluids. So even though we typically measure glucose in the blood, we can also measure the sugars in other body fluids like your urine, for instance. It's not good to have too much glucose in your urine. And you can also find glucose in the fluid around the cells in your body, like around your brain or just in the general vicinity around surrounding all your cells. That moist fluid, that's all filled with glucose and other nutrients that your cells need. So with blood glucose, we're talking about reaching a target range of 80 to 130 before a meal, or staying less than 182 hours after the meal. These are the typical goals for blood glucose. The word hypoglycemia means the blood sugar is too low. And typically this is less than 70, but if it drops to less than 55, that's when you have to act immediately. That's almost considered an emergency in the hospital. And you would do that by eating something or taking glucose gel. Hyperglycemia is when your glucose level gets too high, and too high is kind of relative here. Again, we're thinking over 130 before the meal or over 182 after the meal, but your diabetes team can help you define what the high is going to be for you. So again, just remember your blood glucose changes throughout the day. So when do we measure glucose? Typically before and after meals, and before we give ourselves insulin injections, and before or after exercise. But there are some occasions when you want to check more frequently. For instance, if you are hypoglycemic unaware, and that's the situation when your blood sugar gets too low, below that 70, or even to the point of lower than 55, and you do not know it. You don't feel the symptoms. Sometimes this happens because you've taken too much medication, or you haven't eaten, or you're sick, but those are times you really should be measuring your glucose, but you're unaware. And hopefully, if you have an episode of this, you'll know to do it in the future. Glucose can drop in the middle of the night while you're sleeping. And unfortunately, you may be prompted to wake up or asked by your doctor to wake up in the middle of the night if you are one of those people who drop. Before driving or dangerous tasks, again, those are when you want your glucose to be within the target range. And another situation is when you are ill, because your blood glucose can drop dramatically or increase. And certainly if you're having vomiting or diarrhea, those are times when you may have to check more frequently. But in general, it really depends on your individual condition. If you are well controlled, you may not need to check very often. And the way we check glucose typically is by using a finger stick. And you know this, if you don't do it already, you need a machine, a glucometer, you need the strips, you need lancets, and what you do is you simply measure your blood sugar from a small drop of blood. These fingerstick glucose meters are important tools. And when you do this, sometimes people, well, in the past, people wrote down their blood sugar levels. But nowadays, you can use tools online to help keep track of your blood sugars. For instance, if you've got a handheld glucometer, it may upload to your phone or your computer. Down here is something called a Dario, which attaches to your cell phone, and you can check blood sugar with that, and you don't have to punch in any numbers or anything. It just does it automatically. But the point of this was that once you get a record, you can monitor your patterns of your blood sugar, and you can add details like how much insulin you gave at the time, what you ate at the time, your activity at the time, and you can share this information with your doctor and other people who are interested in your health. But fingerstick has its limitations. As a nurse, I don't really like it because it requires me sampling blood from my patients, which is painful. Also, you need supplies like the control solution. Sometimes it's awkward. There are technical issues where you may not have enough of the supply, or something doesn't read correctly. Or a big thing is it's not automatic. You don't know your blood sugar until you performed a glucose check. And the other thing is you only know your glucose level at one point in time. So that's where these continuous glucose monitors come in. The word continuous tells you what it's all about. You know more frequently what your blood sugar is. And if you look on all the websites, they will all advertise that no finger sticks or fewer finger sticks are required. So here I've shown a picture of Nick Jonas. He's a celebrity, a musician, an actor. He's a type 1 diabetic, and he's got a continuous glucose monitor called a Dexcom on here. So, you know, there's a lot of hype about this, and I think it's actually a good thing because of the finger sticks and because of the control that you have in seeing what your blood sugar is at multiple times. So here's a graph. It shows different times of the day and what glucose levels might be. And in this case, maybe you check 6 times during the course of a day. And during the course of a day, it seems like your blood sugar is within this goal region, which is marked by the yellow lines. It seems like it. But if you were to have a continuous glucose monitor, maybe you see something more like this, where your glucose is going up and down during the day, depending on your activity. For instance, maybe in the morning, you had a really low blood sugar, but you didn't realize it because you were asleep. And then your body hormones kicked in and your blood sugar went up. You checked, you had a little breakfast, and then you ran around during the daytime and it went down again. Things like this. So you can see there's peaks and valleys in your glucose levels during the day. And these are missed by the finger stick just because you're not checking those in between time points. So that's one advantage of a continuous glucose monitor, is that you can see those time points. I want to say that this graph, though, is not realistic. From what I've seen, it tends to be more jaggedy, more little peaks and valleys and edges in the graph, but typically this is what you might see during the course of a day. So with continuous glucose monitors, just remember they are measuring not the glucose in your blood, but the glucose in your interstitial fluid. That's the fluid between your cells. So here's the glucose monitor on this person's arm, and this is kind of what it would look like under the skin. There's a little pin kind of thing that sits in the skin. It's a sensor, and it changes according to your body chemistry, and it changes its signal that it gives out according to the glucose level inside your body. Between the continuous glucose monitor and the finger sticks, those numbers will be close, but they rarely match exactly. Although accuracy between the finger sticks and the continuous glucose monitors are improving with each new model. And the continuous glucose monitors typically measure or send out a signal about your blood sugar every 5 to 15 minutes. So here are some very common CGM systems. The Dexcom will have, well, let's just say, let me tell you about the little pieces. They will have a sensor, that's the part that is sitting in your skin, and then a transmitter, which sends a signal out to a reader device or to your cell phone. You can also download apps to see what the readings are on your phone. And not only that, but your doctor can download the apps and take a look at how you've been doing. Or maybe you need to share your information with a family member so they can download the app too and see how you are doing with your blood sugar. Also, this is not a requirement, but these continuous glucose monitors, they can talk to insulin pumps. So if you're somebody who wears an insulin pump, you can definitely use that to help control the insulin dose that you're getting at a time. And then over here on the left are some brands that are common. the three big brands are the Dexcom G6. It has an applicator, which you use to insert the sensor, the transmitter, and then the readers, cell phones. You even see it on your Apple Watch or your app watch if you want to keep an eye on that. We also have the Abbott Freestyle Libre. That has a transmitter that looks like that, and it comes with a reader that also looks like this. And then the Medtronic Guardian, down here on the bottom left, looks like this. It comes with a reader. It talks to your telephone, and it also talks to the Medtronic pump as well. So the sensors, let's talk about the individual parts of the CGM. The sensor, this is what the sensor looks like. It's a really tiny thing. I say it's as thin as a hair, and it's maybe stiff like a little wire that sits in your skin. And that's the thing that senses the biochemical changes in your body that are translated into a change in glucose level in the interstitial fluid. So those things are very small. Here is a picture of the different brands. So this is the part that's not in your skin, but the part that is just outside of your skin. This is the Freestyle Libre. The current models, the 1 and 2, are about this big. And I've shown it compared to the size of a penny right there. So it's not that big. It's actually rather small. They're coming out with the Libre 3. It's not available yet, but you can see this thing is going to be very small. The Dexcom G6 is also, maybe it's double the size, so 2 pennies. And what you see here with the Dexcom is actually the transmitter. Underneath is the sensor part that lodges into your skin. So I wanted to also say that this screenshot that I took is from a YouTube video. There are so many videos out there that show you how to insert these things. Here is an interesting product. It's the Eversense from a company called Senseonics. It's actually an implant, and it is very small. It goes under the skin. The sensor lasts for 90 days, and then on top of the sensor is a transmitter. This transmitter needs to be recharged daily, so you detach it from yourself and then plug it in to recharge it. But the product itself, that transmitter, lasts for a whole year. So this Eversense thing is different because it's actually implanted under the skin. The current model lasts for 90 days, so you'll have to go to your doctor after 90 days and get it re-implanted. This is new. It's practically like, you know, you're not thinking about it because it's under your skin. In the future, they plan to have a model that lasts for 6 months under your skin, and then in 3 years there's going to be something called the Eversense 360, which will last for a whole year. So it's a little like this. It's implanted for the whole year, and you won't need this external transmitter part. The transmitter will be built in. So that's something coming up in the future where basically you'll just have an implant in your skin that's measuring your blood sugar. And the only thing that you'll need on the outside is your cell phone. So these CGM sensors, for an adult, you would attach them to your upper arm or abdomen. Or for children, it's actually the upper buttocks area or their abdomen. The Dexcom G6, the Abbott Freestyle Libre, and the Guardian from Medtronic, those things last for 7 to 14 days. And then you'll have to replace them with a new one. On top of that, the transmitter is attached. This is what the transmitter would be. You would attach it with tape. Well, it clicks on to the sensor and then you attach it with tape. I'll show you that in a moment. So the transmitters look like this, and they're attached on top of the sensor, except for the Freestyle Libre, which does not have a transmitter, but I'll talk about that a little later. These things are water resistant. You can shower or you can swim, but they're not fully waterproof. So if you somehow crack it or damage it, it might get damaged and it won't work anymore. Also, when you implant a new sensor, it takes 1 to 2 hours for the Dexcom or the Freestyle Libre to warm up or get used to your body. It takes 24 hours for that Eversense one to get used to your body before you can get accurate readings. So applying a sensor and a transmitter, I've tried it myself. It involves several steps, and you can watch these on YouTube or on the manufacturer's website. It takes some practice, actually, but it involves using something like a implanter or an applicator that you have to that has the sharp part on the inside, and that you use to poke the thing into your body. And there's actually a little needle that helps guide the sensor in place, and you'll have to throw away the needle inserter part with the sharps waste. And then you apply stickers on to hold them in place, and then the transmitters also need to be clicked on and held in place with stickers. You want to avoid places where there are scars, tattoos, bumps, bony parts, areas that may get bumped with your belt or your backpack or your purse strap, areas that you sleep on. If you wear an insulin pump, you need to attach it 3 inches away from that insulin pump area or 1 inch away from the area you inject yourself with insulin. Be careful not to get lotion, cream, or perfume on the equipment. And like I said, you may need to apply extra tape or an adhesive patch to make it stick, because you are going to be keeping it on for almost 2 weeks. So the next part of a CGM system are the display device, where you actually see what the blood glucose levels are. Typically, the system will come with its own reader or receiver, or if you're using the Medtronic one, it will have display on your pump. But most people, I think, will use a cell phone to see their numbers. You can also download the information to your computer as well, or your tablet, your iPad. And these are the apps you would use. You would have to download them if you want them on your phone from the App Store. This is the Freestyle Libre Link US, and this is what you would see if you were the user who had the sensor attached to you. Libre Link Up is a way to share the information with your family or your doctor. So Link Up is how to share information with others, not yourself. For Dexcom 6, these are what you would see on your phone screen. It shows numbers, it shows arrows. And then if you wanted to see a family member's glucose, you would download Dexcom Follow, or you could use Dexcom Clarity, which kind of analyzes the data for you. So I've just shown here what it would look like on the App Store if you were to get the Follow or Clarity from Dexcom. And finally, with the Guardian, this is the Medtronic one. Here are some screenshots of what you would see on your screen. And if you wanted to share the information, you would use these other apps like CareLink. To connect it with your MiniMed pump, you would also download another app. So what all these apps have in common is you'll see a number with an arrow, It's showing you what your glucose level is, where it's moving over time. So these arrows, Each different product has its own way of displaying an arrow, but they all seem to show one thing, whether your glucose is going up or down, and whether it's going up or down very fast. So this is what it would look like with the Freestyle Libre. If it's going up quickly, the arrow would go straight up. If it's falling down quickly, it would go straight down, and then there are intermediate arrows in between. With the Dexcom, there's also colors. So if it's red, that means it's low. If it's yellow, it's high, and gray, you're within your target range. And then the arrows, they're a little bit different. They show these double blips if you're going up or down. But the display shows you a graph also, and it shows how you've been over the past few hours and whether you've been in the target goal within those few hours. Another thing is there is a 10 to 15 minute data display when the glucose is rapidly changing. So it might not catch you if you've given yourself, for instance, a bolus of insulin and your glucose level is changing very fast. It might not catch right away, and that's why it's important to understand that it's a trend that's displaying on your phone. So alarms, these are very important. I've shown here some common alarms for low glucose levels. It would show red on the Dexcom area, on the Dexcom. But this number here, 118, it's not too bad, but it shows this alert because within 20 minutes, you may drop to 55 or lower. So these are alarms that you don't want to ignore. So I think the difference between an alert is it's telling you what's going on at the time, and you might not need to act on it, but an alarm is something you should act. You can change the settings so that it doesn't alarm. For instance, if you're over 180, you may change your settings so the alarm level is higher, but I don't think you want to change your low alarm because that's the advantage of having a continuous glucose monitor. It's dangerous to go to a low level, so keep that alarm for hypoglycemia on. So sometimes you might see a number and you might not feel the symptoms of being very high or very low, and that's when you want to consult your regular glucometer, check your finger stick. I think sometimes you might not believe the number that you're seeing, in which case it's best to have that tool still available. Some common technical alerts that you might see are signal loss, like if the sensor is too far away from the phone or the reader. The sensor replacement alert, because these things, like I said, only have a lifespan of 7 to 4 days typically. The Guardian model and the Eversense model may need calibration. I think even the Dexcom may ask you to calibrate with a finger stick. So these are some alerts you'll also see. And then the battery low. Those are things that are not related to the actual sensor itself, but just like technical things that may go wrong. I'm sorry, what I mean is alerts that are not related to your blood sugar itself, but things that are going wrong with the actual machinery. So pros and cons. The Freestyle Libre is very common, but unfortunately, it's not a true continuous glucose monitor. It's a flash glucose monitor. What you do is you have to hold up your phone to your arm to get a reading and see new numbers. And you won't get alarms or alerts with the Freestyle Libre until those new numbers are uploaded. However, there are things you can buy, transmitters to attach to your Freestyle Libre there's one called the Meow Meow, and I've shown it here. There's something else called the Night Rider, and both of these have interesting named apps that you can buy from another company and attach to your Freestyle Libre, and it turns it into a continuous glucose monitor. But the company Abbott is coming out soon, and I don't know how soon, but they say soon on their website, with a Freestyle Libre 3. It's the one that's the same size as a penny, and you won't need to attach an external transmitter. and it will also be a continuous glucose monitor. So things are changing, things are continually getting better. So that's the Freestyle Libre. Some other pros and cons with the other brands is accuracy. Typically, these things are very good at the middle range of blood sugars, but when it's way up high or the numbers are way down low, that's where you tend to see errors. But typically, these things are considered very accurate. The Guardian and the Eversense, like I said before, may need calibration with finger sticks, or do need calibration with finger sticks, and sometimes the Dexcom may prompt you to calibrate with a finger stick too. Also, more cons. I talked about the transmitter range. You need to keep the device between 6 to 20 feet next to your phone. So you need to be between 6 and 20 feet of your phone or your reader in order to get a signal going. Otherwise, it'll backlog. And then the battery life, the Dexcom G6 its transmitter can't be recharged. You actually have to replace that thing every 3 months. The other transmitters, you simply plug into electricity and it gets recharged. Sometimes the sensors, the part that you stick in your body, last shorter than the expected 7 to 14 days than the manufacturers say they will. Sometimes there's just an error, sometimes they fall off, things like that. The other thing is comfort. So are you comfortable having that little pinprick thing in your body? I would say, yeah, I think it's worth it. It's better than continually pricking your fingers multiple times a day. But some people can't stand having something attached to their arm or their abdomen. Sometimes these things fall off. They sell lots of different patches online to keep these things on. This is just an example I've shown of different ones that you can buy, for kids or even in adults. There are so many available. I picked these colorful ones just in the spirit of spring here, but comfort is another issue. And cost. Cost is another issue. So I don't know what your insurance is, but most of these things are covered with most insurance plans, but sometimes there's out-of-pocket costs. The Senseonics Eversense, that needs to be implanted at a doctor's office. So you may have to spend a few $100s for the implantation with the doctor. The Dexcom G6, like I said, the transmitter lasts 3 months, and sensor needs to be replaced every 7 days, so you'll have to pay for those. Typically, it's about $200 for those supplies, depending on your insurance. Same with the Freestyle Libre. You will have to pay some kind of monthly cost as well. And like I said, it depends on what your insurance is. So for Medicare, who qualifies for a continuous glucose monitor? Typically, you need a diagnosis of type 1 or type 2 diabetes, and you're using a fingerstick glucose monitors to check 4 or more times a day. And for Medicare, you need to be injecting yourself multiple times a day with insulin, or you're using an insulin pump. That's the Medicare criteria. Your insurance company may have other criteria. There's another cost. And if you're using your cell phone, you'll have to pay for not just the cell phone, but the service itself. And things that come with your cell phone, like if it breaks, you'll have to replace it, or if you need a new case. Those are all things that have to be considered. If you are a parent of a child with a continuous glucose monitor, your child may be asking for a cell phone already, and they're only 10 years old. So these are things to consider. It's not just the CGM system itself, it's the cell phone. Other things, are these compatible with insulin pumps? And I would say yes, they are getting better and better all the time in making sure that the software is compatible with insulin pumps so that they talk to each other. Certainly the MiniMed by Medtronic already talks to its insulin pump. Also, when you're getting a scan, a medical scan, like an X-ray or CT scan, you may have to remove your sensor and transmitter before an X-ray and certainly before an MRI scan. When you're going through the airport, you don't want to take this thing off. You'll have to ask for a pat down screening or a hand wand waving rather than going through the big X-ray machine. Another thing to consider is the waste. So this is a Dexcom inserter. It is good for one insertion for 7 days, and then you throw this thing away. A lot of people don't like the waste. Some of the inserters are reusable, like this one from Medtronic, but this Dexcom one gets thrown away each week. Some people have a problem with the plastic waste, and also there's still sharp waste. That little sensor and the needle that's in there, they have to get thrown away with the sharp waste. But in general, technology is moving forward, and I told you that these things are getting upgraded all the time. Keep in mind, if you have type 2 diabetes, I think in the future, certainly within the next few years, if you've got type 2 diabetes and you're controlling just with oral medications, I think they are upgrading these so that eventually you may be eligible to get a CGM if you're not already using it. Now this is the end of my presentation, and just letting you know where I got a lot of my information, the manufacturer's websites, YouTube, and also nonprofit groups have good information about this online. Thank you, everyone.